These are the best decks by win rate according to inkdecks.com, and we're going to go through them and teach you guys how to play them. What is up, my Lorcana Goons, and welcome back to the Lorcana Goons channel. My name is Kevin, and it's looking like we're in a Tier 0 format. At least that's what a lot of people are saying. If you don't know, inkdecks.com, they're an awesome website that keeps up with tournament reports, deck lists, and technically win rates right here. They dropped this big matrix going over the best decks of the format, with red, blue popsicle, and blue steel items being number 1 up here with the overall best win rate. This is data fetched from over 6,000 matches. 6,399 matches analyzed, actually. So what we're going to do today is we're going to pick deck lists from each color combination and each deck type, because deck color combination does not mean it's the same deck, by the way. And we're going to briefly go over these mulligan processes and what you're trying to do when you're playing these decks, or what to expect when you play against these decks at your tournaments. So if you're not a fan of paywall-based content and you want to support this channel, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you're a Lorcana Goon, because it does support the channel. And that's not to take a shot at anybody who does paywall content, because a lot of the players who do it definitely deserve it. So be sure to also check out the metafies of some of these top players. Now, in no way, shape, or form would I call myself a pro player for most of these color combinations, but I do have some decent accolades for Lorcana under my belt already, and I'd like to just say a huge shout out to all of these players who have been doing well at these tournaments, because they're the ones that are winning, not me. My hope here is to not make you experts on these decks, but to at least give you just a better understanding of what's going on through the mind of these pro players when they're making the decisions they're making. So I want to start off with the first place list from the Red Saber Games Grand Prix. Huge shout out to Christian Pelayo for getting first place, winning an Enchanted Elsa, by the way, with his Ruby Sapphire list. Real quick, if you don't know what Ruby Sapphire does, you basically want to ramp into your red colors. So turn 1, you obviously want to open up with an item like Popsicle Vitalisphere, and you definitely want a mulligan for your ramp cards. So you have Sail the Azurite Sea, you also have How Far I'll Go, Tipo, and alongside Great Stone Dragon. That's going to be able to get you to your big bodies very quickly compared to other Sapphire decks. And what's really good about Sapphire Ruby is you have bodies that necessarily don't get banished really easily compared to other color combinations, right? We have Maui's, Maui Sharks, Maleficent Dragons, and Big Sisus in combination with Sapphire Coil to really give you an advantage against these steel matchups. There's a couple different ways you can build your deck. You can throw in Lucky Dimes, you can play Tamatoa Happy as a Clam and Tamatoa So Shiny. As you can see, Christian opted to run 4 copies of Cusco because locations and items are very huge in the meta, but a lot of that is going to be based off of, you know, your local meta or the decks that you're expecting to see, and you can probably take some cards in and out like Lucky Dime, etc. So here we have the deck uploaded on inktable.net. This is a website where you can test against an AI, and it's linked directly to Dreamborn. We actually are going to be playing testing against Sailors updated to red blue list, so we can get some decent testing in. But let's go over some mulligan strategies real quick. Immediately, the first thing I see here is we've opened up some uninkable high cost cards, which we don't want in our opening hand. You definitely want to prioritize finding your ramp in the early game or Popsicle, and sometimes in mirror matches you're going to want to prioritize Flavor Sham instead. When you're using the mulligan in Lorcana, you have to understand that it's going to be dependent on your matchup, but if you don't know what you're playing against, there's some general rules you want to follow. Like in this instance, we have 0 ramp cards in our hand, so immediately I want to get rid of every single card on my hand in hopes that I see either a Tipo, a Sail, or maybe even just Popsicle into one of those cards, right? So we're going to put back all 7 cards and let's see what it gives us. And look at that, we saw Popsicle, Flavor Sham, and Tipo off of this mulligan. Sometimes you need to put back all 7 cards. Most of the time, in my opinion, if you're not putting back most of the cards in your hand for the mulligan, then you're probably doing it wrong. In my opinion, you need to take advantage of Lorcana's mulligan because it is so broken. We're going to run that back one more time. I want to try a couple different mulligans with you guys. So in this hand, we actually do open up a Tipo Growing Sun in our opening hand, but that is our only ramp that we have. Actually, we did find How Far I'll Go as well. Sometimes keeping How Far I'll Go with Tipo is not a bad curve if you're going first, because on turn 2 you can go Tipo, you get the extra ink, and you'll be able to How Far I'll Go if you don't have any other follow-up. You also have Grandma Tala in this deck. Some people are playing Scrooge, some people just use Flavor Sham for this part, but Tipo into Grandma Tala into How Far I'll Go is always a good play. But personally, I really want to see Popsicle Flavor Sham, especially if I know I'm playing against a mirror match, right? So like I said, we're testing against the red-blue mirror match, and I really want to see a Flavor Sham or a Popsicle in our opening hand. But immediately the cards that I think are unnecessary are going to be the Be Prepared, the Cusco, the Maleficent Dragon, and maybe even Brawl. You have so many removal cards in this deck, whereas other decks you might need Brawl in your opening mulligan. In this deck, you have tons of removal, so you probably don't need to keep cards like Brawl in your hand. I am tempted to keep this Grandma Tala and this Halfargo, but it seems very greedy because like I said, I'm really looking for a turn 1 popsicle or item. But 1000% of the time, we keep Tipo, and if we can find Sale, that's even better because Sale is a little bit better than Tipo in my opinion. Look at that. We found a 1-cost item for turn 1. We found Tipo for turn 2, and then we can go into Flavorsham. How far I'll go. This is why you play multiple copies of these power cards. You obviously want to max out on playing your ramp cards, your Flavorshams, and maybe even how far I'll go, so that even when you put them back into your deck, you have a really high chance of drawing them back into the mulligan. If I would have kept How Far I'll Go and Grandma in this hand, it would have lowered my ability to see Flavorshams plus an item card, and maybe it would have given me 2 How Far I'll Goes, which is completely unnecessary in my hand, right? So even though it was a very tempting play to keep Grandma and How Far I'll Go, I'd rather just put them both in the deck so that we can draw it again, and that's exactly what happened. Now, how do you play this deck, right? So it seems pretty obvious. Turn 1, we're going to play the 1-cost card, but what do we ink? Inking in Lorcana is for sure the hardest part of the game, in my opinion. Do I have to ink Tipo? Do I have to ink Sale or Flavorsham? Because those really are my only options. And this is the hard part. So fellow red-blue players, correct me if I'm wrong, because I am immediately tempted to ink this Tipo because I think Sale is a little bit better than Tipo. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to ink Tipo and play our 1-cost item. There is a world where you decide to not ink Tipo, you ink Sale instead, but that's usually if you're playing against aggressive decks. So they're going to go ahead and ink a Tamatoa Happy as a Clam, and they pass turn. That's very good for us here. Okay, so next up, we have 2 things to ink. We could either ink a Maui Half Shark or one of our Flavorshams because we're going to play Sale this turn pretty much no matter what. Doesn't seem like we need Maui Half Shark immediately right now, and it's going to take us about 2 more turns to really ramp into this card, which is very possible, but this feels more like a late game card rather than an early game card, so we're going to ink that away. Use Sale the Azurite Sea. Let's just draw a card, and now we can ink again. And the only other option we have is Flavorsham to ink, which is totally fine. You know, in the mirror match, you definitely want to keep as many Flavorshams as possible, but it's okay. It's our only inkable card. We can play Popsicle with our leftover ink, and we get to draw a card after that. And now we have a Pirate's Life. So that's pretty good because now we have a guaranteed card we can ink next turn, and then we can play Flavorsham. They're going to ink another Tamatoa So Shiny, and they play their Sapphire Coil. Mind you, this is an AI that doesn't really know what it's doing, so it's going to be an easier way to win, but that's why we're testing, you know. Pirate's Life is going to be the card we ink next because it's the least impactful card in our hand. We have removal, we have ramp, and we have Tamatoa Happy as a Clam, which is going to be able to grab back these 2 items, right? And we're actually going to do that. We're going to go ahead and play Flavorsham, pop one of our items. So in this scenario, I'm going to pop my Vitalisphere because it's looking like I can ramp to this Tamatoa Happy as a Clam pretty quickly, and I want to be able to grab 2 items back from the discard pile. You can actually just pop your own Popsicle for free, which is really convenient, whereas Vitalisphere, you'd have to pay some extra ink to do that, so I'm not going to actually commit to popping the Popsicle, which is going to maximize our ability to get value off of this Tamatoa. So we're going to pass there. They're going to go ahead and ink another card. They ink their Flavorsham, and they play a Popsicle into another Sapphire Coil, which might not be the best strategy if you're playing that Sapphire Ruby deck. So now we have a full hand going. We could even draw more cards off Flavorsham, but there's actually no reason to, in my opinion. I'd rather just sing How Far I'll Go here. Usually I want to sing cards like this that are going to give us some deck advantage or deck information before we continue the rest of our play. So we're going to do that before we ink anything. Now we have 2 options. We can grab another How Far I'll Go or Sapphire Coil. Kind of want to get this Sapphire Coil because our opponent has a Sapphire Coil too, and this will be really good with this Sea-Suit Daring Visitor we have in hand, but more ramp is always really nice too, right? But I'm gonna grab this Sapphire Coil because it feels like we're in an item war situation going on here, and because we ramped the next turn, we can for sure play this Tamatoa Happy as a Clam. So really what we're playing around here is probably big removal cards like B-Pep or Sisu, and they're pretty far away from Sisu. They have not been ramping, so we're going to take advantage of that. We're going to go ahead and ink this Maui Hero to All, and we're going to play another Flavorsham just so we can draw more cards here and refill our hand. Maybe draw another 1-cost item. No 1-cost item, but now we have double Flavorsham on board with a Tamatoa coming down next turn. We're going to have a full hand and a full board. He's going to use Sisu Daring Visitor to pop one of our Flavorshams. That's totally fine. They can't shift this Sisu until they have 6 ink, and next turn they will not have 6 ink, so we don't even have to worry about that. Really what we can do right now is start off by playing our Tamatoa Happy as a Clam. Take advantage of the fact that we've been ramping first of them. Look at that. We have 2 items in our discard pile. Look at the value. Look how many cards we have in our hand now. So now we're going to ink another card. Let's go ahead and ink this Tipo because we have a sale to ink twice anyway, and we'll go ahead and play another Popsicle. Now that we have another popsicle going, we draw again. Our flavor sham's going to get more value. We can quest, we can pop this popsicle and draw 2 more cards. So much value here with this one flavor sham that's hit the board, and we're doing it way faster than the opponent. They're going to go ahead and hard cast off Fargo. They quest with their Sisu. Now I'm worried about a shift Sisu coming down because that's going to be the way they remove our flavor sham unless they have Brawl or something like that. So I want to make sure I remove this off of the board. Notice how we're playing around their cards just as much as thinking about our plays, right? So I'm going to use Sisu Daring Visitor immediately. Go ahead and get rid of their Sisu. This also opens up a Sisu shift line for us, which is really important because if they decide to start using Flavor Sham, we're going to be able to wipe out their Flavor Sham pretty early on. And we've been ramping way faster than them, so we could actually just hard cast this Sisu, and that's totally fine too. If we want to take advantage of the fact that we have a Flavor Sham on board, we will go ahead and gain some more value and more information before we commit to the rest of our play. We'll Popsicle, we'll draw, we'll Flavor Sham, pop the Popsicle. Looking very nice here. Now I know why people say this is a tier 0 deck. And of course, we're going to want to ink multiple times in this scenario because we want to keep ramping. We want to keep getting as much ink advantage over the opponent as possible. So now we can ink twice this turn. Doesn't seem like we need grandmas anymore right now because we have visions. And quite frankly, I like Maui against location-based decks. And Big Doug Manor isn't the most popular card in Ruby Sapphire. So I'm going to ink this as well. Now we have 3 ink to spare. We can set up our Sapphire Coil. We can set up our Vitalis Sphere. And then we can even go as far as to quest with this Tamatoa and play another Sapphire Coil for free. We pretty much did what our opponent did, but we did it on turn 9. And at this point, it's looking like we are way ahead. We have much more advantage than the opponent. There is a world where they ink play B-Prep next turn, but that is totally fine. We have visions. We have another Flavor Sham. We have more than enough resources to keep our opponent on their toes. And in fact, we're just going to play this Monstrous Dragon, pop their Medusa, and just keep questing because now we have a 2 quester. We have a 3 quester. There's even a world where we can shift this Sisu for no reason and just start questing for 3. We're already at 7 lore, and I'm pretty sure from here on in, you guys know what to do. Oh yeah, this game is way over. We have another Flavor Sham in our hand for backup. Our big Sisu is going to clear their board. We have 2 characters on the board that can quest for 4. We don't even need to use our Sapphire Coil right now. But once again, we're playing against the AI, and really what I want you guys to understand is just to be able to know what cards to ink, what your strategies are, and where your priorities are when playing a deck like this. Next up, we're going to break down Sapphire Steel. This is the next best deck of the format, and for the sake of the video, I'm going to go over the item version first and then I'll go over the Kiwi version later. Sapphire Steel with items, a very similar strategy. You want to prioritize finding your ramp cards. This deck does play different cards like Fishbone Quill and Lucky Dime because you can really take advantage of your Tamatoa So Shiny and Aerial Treasure Collector. I think one of the best cards in this deck is going to be Strength of Raging Fire and Along Came Zeus because this is going to be able to counter your opponent's cards like Flavor Sham, Shift Sisu, even their Tamatoa Happy as it clams. And really what's really good about this deck is you can gain early tempo and just put pressure from turn 1 all the way till, turn 6 if you can finish the game that quickly, which is very possible in a deck like this. There's also Scrooge McDuck on turn 4, which is different than Grandma because he has way better stats, and chances are you're probably going to hit an item off of him because you have 4 Fortisphere, 4 Popsicle in addition to combo off with your Bell Apprentice Inventor, which against aggro decks is really important because right now, if you're not playing Sapphire, you're probably playing a deck that can quest for 2 starting on turns 1 through 3, and playing this Bell Apprentice Inventor is going to be really strong against those decks. Which, by the way, shout out Nicholas Montequia for getting 2nd place at the World Class Cards 5K tournament. So here is our opening hand with Sapphire Steel. We're going against Red Blue, just like I've been saying, and we've opened up a Tipo, Storm, Double Strength, Zeus, Fishbone, and Lucky Dime. My first thought is I don't need this Lucky Dime, don't need this Zeus. Honestly, I don't like keeping songs in Lorcana, really, because people are playing Ursula Deceiver, which is an Emerald card that will snipe songs out of your hand. Amber Steel decks are playing Bare Necessities as well. So in my opinion, probably not the best to keep songs in your hand unless you absolutely know what you're playing against. And like I've been saying, against some of these aggro decks, you probably do want to keep maybe a Storm Rage on and try and find a Bell Popsicle situation. But for the sake of what's going on now, we don't know what we're playing against. I'd rather just keep it safe and keep a Tipo and a Fishbone Quill. We'll put all these back and we'll see what we got here. We ended up drawing more songs anyways, which is kind of like what I was saying before. You play so many copies of these cards that you don't even need to keep them in your hand sometimes. You just put them back into the deck anyways because chances are you're going to draw them very quickly. We're going to run this back with another mulligan just like before, and this time we did open up the forbidden combo of Bell plus Popsicle, which is really strong, so we're going to keep that. We opened up a ramp card of Sail the Azurite Sea, so I'll keep that for sure. I don't need Cogsworth because we don't know the matchup, and then let's say we we'll keep one Scrooge and no Pete. That way we can ramp into the Scrooge and hopefully find more items. So normally I like to put way more cards back, but there's a pretty good curve we have going on. Popsicle turn 1 with Bell, turn 2 Sail the Azurite Sea, turn 3 we can go Scrooge, and there's a world where we draw a song for this Bell. So let's see if we do draw songs with this Bell, and we did. We drew Strength of a Raging Fire, which, like I was saying, if you're playing against an aggressive deck, an Emerald deck, Amber, something along those lines, you can start off with this Forbidden combo. We'll ink Cogsworth because he's the least impactful card in our hand. Cogsworth is a more matchup dependent card, so if we know we're playing against Steel, obviously Cogsworth's very good. If we don't know we're playing against Steel, then we just, probably ink it or ink one of the Scrooges, right? And now we have double Sail, but we definitely want to establish this Bell immediately. We'll pass turn there. Our opponent's going to ink a Grandma Tala and play a Popsicle and pass it back to us. Doesn't seem like they play Bell either because most red-blue decks don't play Bell. Now we know we're playing against a Sapphire deck, so we can go ahead and capitalize on that. Let's go ahead and ink one of these Scrooges because I don't think we need to immediately. I want to keep some more ramp in my hand just in case. And we drew another Scrooge. So now this is the hard part. What do we ink here? Do we ink the Strength of a Raging Fire? Do we ink one of the Sails? Or do we ink Scrooge? This really is a tough one because I can use Storm and Strength within the same couple turns. I think I'm going to go ahead and ink one of our Scrooge McDucks. Doesn't seem like I need another one here, and I'm just going to start gaining some lore with this Bell. That's what you want to do against these red-blue decks because they're a little bit slower than us in terms of early game playability. We have way more characters we can play in the early game than they do. So they're going to go ahead and play a Popsicle followed by a Sail the Azurite Sea. So they're ramping just like us. Now we have to decide, are we going to keep ramping or are we going to play Scrooge for some card value? We're going to go ahead and follow up with this Scrooge line that we've been talking about by inking our Tipo because I do think Sail is a little bit more powerful than Tipo. Now we have a Scrooge going on and ooh, we missed. That's the problem with Scrooge McDuck. There is no guarantee that you will gain a free card unlike something like Grandma Tala, but hey, we can still keep questing, we can still keep ramping, and I think that's really what it's about, right? Yeah, as I'm playing this, I'm also realizing maybe I shouldn't have kept this Strength. Maybe it wasn't that important. Maybe I actually do need to keep a second Scrooge there so we can just keep putting pressure on the board over and over again. But this is what's really cool about this deck. We can pretty much out everything that they have to do. So we're going to start off by singing this Storm Rage on with our Bell. Get rid of their Sisu Daring Visitor, which is going to stop a Sisu Shift line. We're also going to get to draw some cards, which is important. And now we can start by playing a Fortisphere. This will draw us another card, and we drew it off the top. So we're making these decisions before we ink anything. Now, we want to keep seeing as much information as possible from our deck. So we will play the Sail the Azurite Sea. We'll draw a card. In fact, we'll keep drawing cards. We'll draw more cards. We're going to play a Popsicle now and draw another card. So we have some decisions to make here. We can ink twice this turn, and we can quest with this Scrooge. So we're questing with the Scrooge every time. Now we have a Zeus in hand, so I don't think we need this Strength anymore because Zeus is pretty much the card that outs Sisu, Tamatoa Happy has a Clam, Maui's, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and ink this Strength of Raging Fire and ink this Bell as well. And I'll pass there because I want to keep this Fishbone Quill just in case we need some more items or some more ramp going on if we start drawing into our big Tamatoas or Aerial Treasure Collectors. Especially in this matchup, if I draw Aerial Treasure Collector, we're going to have more items than the opponent, right? They're going to play a Tipo, they're going to ink away their hand as well, so that's telling me they probably have some big characters in their hand. But look at this, we drew more songs to make sure that we have the board advantage. So that's what you want to do with Sapphire Steel. Constantly keep board advantage and make sure your opponent does not get any board advantage. We're going to go ahead and quest there, and we'll go ahead and play our Pete Games Referee to stop any Be Prepared's coming down on turn 7, which is really good. And we'll play this Fishbone Quill as well in case we need to get rid of some stuff here. We're really looking for a Flavor Sham. That's what we want to see here. And sometimes in these Sapphire matchups, if you don't have Flavor Sham and they do, it can be a little tough. So there is a world where you want to also hard mulligan for Flavor Sham if you know you're playing against Sapphire. Fortisphere is our next card, and as you can see, we're just going to keep drawing cards until we look for a Flavor Sham. No Flavor Sham yet, but we need to get rid of this Flavor Sham on their side of the board. So we're going to sing our Long Came Zeus with this Scrooge McDuck, deal 5 damage there, and now we can hard cast our Strength of a Raging Fire, which we just drew, to eliminate their Flavor Sham, and we can keep questing. So now that we've been gaining pressure over and over again, turn by turn, they need to out this. They need to figure out how they're going to get rid of this board, and if they don't have Be Prepared or a way to, clear multiple characters at once, they're going to be struggling. The only way to do that is going to be big Sisu, and they have Sapphire Coil set up, but most of my characters have more than 2 strength anyways, so they're going to have to pick multiple for that to go off. And that's exactly what they did. They inked the card, they used Sapphire Coil on our Bell, and they played big Sisu to clear one of our characters because you can't clear multiple. Now we're going to go ahead and play the Popsicle we top deck because we're just better like that, and we can just keep on questing. I do think that we want to quest with this Scrooge every time. We'll go ahead and quest with this Pete anyways, because even if he does get this value trade, he's going to have to heal his Sisu by clearing a Popsicle. And if we don't, they can use Sapphire Code to make sure that they get some good value there. So we'll play another Pete to stop a Be Prepared from coming down. And really what we're looking for here is a Tamatoa Happy as a Clam, or we're looking for our own Flavor Sham. And without Flavor Sham, it does get a little bit hard to win these Sapphire mirror matches. So if you know you're playing against Sapphire, probably prioritize Flavor Sham as well. And look at that, we drew Big Tamatoa, which we can't play because we have not been inking. Oof. All right, here for sure you need to get rid of this big Sisu so it doesn't cause any more problems. They actually didn't get any value off their Tamatoa. They could have popped their own Popsicles so that they grabbed them back, which would have been insane value for them. But we're going to go ahead and pass, because really what I want to be able to do is use both Petes to swing into his Tamatoa if he decides to quest with that. They're going to play another big Sisu. They can't ink with their Sapphire Codes, which saves our Petes, lets our Petes survive, which is not too bad. We draw another big Tamatoa, so we're going to ink one of them so that we can play the next one next turn. In this scenario, we're going to use Fishbone Quill to not reveal to our opponent that we have this card, and we're just going to pass there, because now I want to use both Petes to clear his Sisu instead, because Sisu quests for 3 and Tamatoa only quests for 2. And if we would have quested, that would have been really bad for us, because he had Maui anyways, and that would have cleared our board, which would have been really bad. All right, here we drew Strength of Raging Fire, which lets us ink finally to 8 ink, which is not bad. And now we can use both Popsicles to just heal our own characters for no reason there. This is a cool play you can do when you're playing Sapphire decks, because basically Popsicle is the best card in the deck, and you can get rid of them for free. Now you can play Tamatoa, and you can grab back your Popsicle from your discard pile, which basically means you can play the game again, right? We're going to have to use both Petes here to slow him down from questing, so we're going to have to clear his big Sisu, which is unfortunate for us because it gets a good trade. But hey, we have big Tamatoa here. This can contest his Tamatoa Happy as a Clam. He has no cards in hand. So really, I think we're in a good spot, because now we haven't seen a single Flavor Sham or Visions of the Future. So I think we can find it very soon. He can't quest with Tamatoa. Sisu Daring Visitors not doing anything. And now, and we drew 3 big Tamatoas back to back. That's what happens sometimes with this deck. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to use our Tamatoa to challenge into his Tamatoa. And now we're going to go off and start using Popsicles to heal our Tamatoas, etc., etc. Let's go ahead and use this Popsicle and see what we get off the top. And it's another Popsicle. Would you look at that? Doesn't look like we need this Popsicle, though, because as you know, we have some in the discard pile. So we're going to ink it away with our Fishbone Quill. We'll play another big Tamatoa, and we're going to grab another Popsicle from the discard pile. Now we're just looping Tamatoas, and if they don't have B-Prep, which a lot of red-blue decks don't play B-Prep anymore, we're in a good spot. But they drew Flavor Sham. That's their second Flavor Sham, and we haven't seen a single one. And this does get a little tilting sometimes if you're playing Sapphire and your opponents draw way more Flavor Shams than you do, but that's kind of the matchup sometimes. Okay, they're going to go ahead and do a value trade by getting rid of the big Tamatoa with some of their cards, and now we're going to go ahead and use this Visions We Just Top deck, which is very nice in this scenario. Finally, a Flavor Sham, and now we can pretty much come back into the game and call this game ours. We'll play this Flavor Sham. We're going to pop our Popsicle again. We'll draw 2 cards. We'll play, actually, there's a variety of things we can do here. We can play a Popsicle and quest for 4 because of this Tamatoa, grabbing back another Popsicle. I'm actually going to start out by playing Popsicle so that we can see more cards from our deck. Maybe we want to ink something off the top, and that's totally fine. We'll use Fishbone Quill to ink this Fortisphere because we have more than enough items. I want to keep Lucky Dime and Scrooge here so that we can just get more and more value over and over again, but we're going to go ahead and quest with our big Tamatoa. This gives us 13 lore now, and we're going to grab back a Popsicle because that's just unfair, right? We can ink our Popsicle, and now we can play Scrooge. Scrooge is going to give us more and more pressure. So Fishbone Quill is the item we can grab. We're going to go ahead and grab that. Now we have a full hand again, pretty much consisting of Fishbone plus Lucky Diamond. Next turn we win because if they can't kill this big Tamatoa, we're going to be able to quest for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 because we're going to be able to play both of them from our hand, which is really nice. They're going to go ahead and use Be Prepared off the top. Lucky for them that they're able to draw it. And now it's a race. Now it's going to be a race to see who can get the card they need first. I'm going to go ahead and set up my Lucky Dime because Lucky Dime is going to be able to get us to win a little bit faster than the opponent. We'll play Bell for not the ability. We're going to just go ahead and play Bell regularly, and we're going to use our card ability for Fishbone Quill, ink again, card ability for Lucky Dime, get the lore from the Bell, and now we're pretty much questing for 2 every single turn. If we top deck a big Tamatoa, some 3 lore questers, some heavy cards, we're going to be able to take back this game. They could have inked and used double Sapphire Code to get rid of my Bell, but that's not what's happening here. It's looking like they don't have it, so we're going to quest. we're going to use a Lucky Dime ability, gain our extra lore, play the Tipo, go super wide, try and end this game. We don't have any extra stuff for Tipo. We're at 16 lore. Next turn, we can quest for 1, 2. Potentially, if we draw a 2 lore quester, nope, never mind. They're going to brawl us. They're going to brawl us. So now they're at 15 lore. We're at 16. We're racing. Let's try and see a Tamatoa happy as a clam. Let's see a Flavor Sham. We saw Storm Rage on, which is not bad at all. We can hard cast this, get rid of their Sisu, which is going to stop a Sisu shift line. Ooh, Flavor Sham. That's what we like to see. Our second Flavor Sham makes an appearance finally. We'll pop one of our items, and now we can use a Lucky Dime again to gain more lore, and we can quest with our Tipo, gain even more lore. Puts us at 18. We're in lethal range. We're even going to go as far as to use this strength to get rid of his Tipo, because we don't want him to gain any more lore. And from there, you pass, and pretty much drawing any character that quests for 2 wins us the game, or just questing for 2 is going to win us the game right here. Pretty crazy that we're able to beat the AI, even though we didn't see a Flavor Sham for half that game, but that's how you want to play Sapphire Steel, I think. And like I was saying, I'm in no means a pro with these color combinations, so if you guys have any criticisms, please be kind. Please be kind in the comments if there's any misplays or any other strategies that you guys do when you're playing these decks specifically. So, and yes, I am aware that if this was against a real player, they probably would have beaten me by now, but hey, we didn't draw Flavor Sham for like half that game. Also, Sapphire mirror matches can be notoriously grindy. They can take some time, so be sure to get your reps in so that you don't go into game 3 and get time called on you and then have to win, or you get a draw, right? Because that's like the worst feeling. But let's go over Amethyst Steel. This is a purple steel list in top 4 of the Sunday 5K tournament, or the World Class Cards tournament by Jacob Mueller. Shout out you. This deck is really fast because you're playing cards like the White Rose, Giant Cobra, Merlin Goat, so you're going to be able to have gradual lore burst as you go on throughout the game, as well as some heavy 2 questers like Mr. Smee, Benja, which will pop items, as well as Quest for 2 and Genie, which fulfilled. Interesting tech here. They're even playing Genie Supporter Friend, which is a card that says whenever this character quests, you can shuffle it into the deck and draw 3 cards. That's another clean way to keep a hand advantage over the opponent. So Amethyst Steel is a deck that I am very partial to. I actually really enjoy playing this deck, so this is how I would play this deck. Turn 1, we obviously want to play a 1-cost character. Turn 2, I prefer to play 2 1-cost characters or something like Mr. Smee, just because the meta dictates having like a 2 lore quester as opposed to bouncing your cards with Madam Mimpox or Snake, so I'm not going to keep those in my hand. I like keeping Benja because you never know when you're playing against Sapphire decks, and Sapphire being the best color combination or like the best deck in the meta, I want to keep something that will hard combo that. Don't like keeping songs in my hand like I was saying before, and Pete is more of a late game card because when you want to quest a 20, you want to slap a Pete before. So we kept 2 cards in our hand, and we draw a 2-cost character, which is really nice, alongside some 4 and 3-cost characters. So turn 1, we don't need double goat in our hand, so I'll ink that goat away. I'll play Diablo for turn 1 and I'll pass. I'm okay with keeping this 1 Strength of a Raging Fire because you don't play too many songs in this deck, so the odds of us drawing 2 in this scenario against an Ursula is really low. Looking like we are playing against a Sapphire deck, so we're going to have to hold on to this Benja, and I do want to hold on to our songs now that we know we can keep them in our hand because they're not playing Emerald. Since we're going to be playing our Benja on turn 3 more than likely, I'm going to get rid of this Crab. Some people don't want to do that in this scenario because you can use Crab to bump up Diablo. However, Sapphire decks don't have too many characters to quest with early on, which is, really important to note because this Crab won't get value the same way it would get value when you're playing against something like Steel. So we're going to play our Calhoun on turn 2, Calhoun the Goon, and we're going to quest with our Diablo. That gives us 1 lore already. We're already applying pressure here. We'll see what item they play, if they play another one, or they're going to ramp instead, which is more than reasonable. But now, this Benja is really important. If we're going first, though, this Benja is really important because it would stop a Flavor Sham from coming down, but in this scenario, it's not looking like that's going to happen, right? So, I'm going to go ahead and still follow through with that Benja play, but this time, I'm going to go ahead and ink the strength of... Actually, no, I'm going to ink this Goat, because next turn, we can play Strength and Fire the Cannons, and possibly do some damage to some characters, which is pretty nice. So, we're going to quest with everything. Our Benja hits the board, which gets rid of a Popsicle, which could have been better if they only had 1, because that turns off their Flavor Sham, but, it's okay. Benja still quest for 2, and I'm happy for that. And let's say they have double Flavor Sham. Now they don't have double items to get off, right? They're going to sail again, which means they get to ramp pretty quickly. They're going to go ahead and ink another card. Sisu Daring Visitor comes down, pops our Diablo. Our Diablo gets amazing value there. And now we're going to do one of my favorite plays ever. We're going to get rid of our entire hand and just play Doc, right? So we're going to go ahead and ink our Giant Cobra. We can sing our Strength of a Raging Fire. We're going to go ahead and do that. Get rid of this Sisu Daring Visitor out of the way. There you go. Now we can play a Smee, and we can play a Doc, get rid of the fire the cannons in our hand, which isn't that good in this matchup anyway. So I'd rather just see more filter cards. And look at that, we saw a genie, so we can follow up with genie next turn. Really important to get rid of the Sisu on their 5 ink, because next turn they would have 6 ink and they can shift Sisu. So now we're actually 2 turns away from shift Sisu, which is really important. Keeping fire the cannons there probably wouldn't have made the biggest difference. We could have used fire the cannons instead, but that means we would have had to keep cards in our hand. And I really want to go as wide as possible, as quickly as possible. There is a merit to playing Goat instead of Genie here, because there is a merit in wanting to gain even more lore even faster. But what I want to do is I want to draw another inkable here so that I can ink the next card I draw and play Diablo. So let's see what we draw. We drew Chernadawg, so I'll go ahead and ink the Chernadawg, play Diablo. Now, even through a big Sisu, we don't even care, because through a big Sisu, we're going to draw a card off of the Diablo. They're going to have more ways to lower our strength, because the big Sisu will not clear the Mr. Smee or the Calhoun. And look how much lore I'm already at. I'm already at 10 lore. I'm at 10 lore. I'm pretty much presenting lethal within the next 2 turns, because I have multiple 2 lore questers, 2, 4, 6 with the Genie and the Benja and the Smee. And he's forced to use Brawl on a Benja, which is really good for us, which means that they only have a limited amount of ink to use this turn, and they're going to use it spending 4 ink on Halfarago and a Tipo. So this next turn, they probably can use Be Prepared if they have it. So we're going to start off by questing with everything, get as much value as possible. This is going to put us at 17 lore. We're at 17 lore now with 5 ink. We have 6 ink in our hand to spend, but we're going to slap this goat, because this goat does not die to big Sisu. Does not die to Sisu, the empowered sibling, which is really important. And there we go. There's the big Sisu. And now our goat survives. We draw a card off of the Diablo. This is why you want to keep certain cards in your hand, because certain cards will survive these board wipes, which is really important. He's going to go ahead and use Flavor Sham to swing into my Mr. Smee, because he does not want to get me to 20, but it doesn't matter. He could not stop us. He could not stop us in time. We're going to just quest with our goat and quest with the Calhoun. Call it a day. We could even play Pete Games this turn to ensure there's no Be Prepared. Look at that. We finished the game on 5 ink. That was about turn 6 for us, turn 7, I believe, and we were able to get to 20 way faster than they could even clear our board. I also want to note that I'm going first, in these practice games. And it's really important to understand that when you're going second, your lines or your mulligans change a little bit. For example, when you're playing Amethyst cards like Crabs and Foxes, when you're going second against most decks, you want to keep some of those in your hand. But against Sapphire decks, you really want to go fast. So your line of play is going to be pretty much the same. You know what I mean? So because Sapphire is the most represented deck in the meta right now, I'll pretty much just keep going first every time. Real quick, I didn't go over a second mulligan for that. So this is our next mulligan. We don't have a single 1-drop character in our hand, and that scares me. I also don't like keeping docks in my opening hand, because you play multiple dock anyways. So you're more than likely going to see it in your draw as you play the game out. And Snake is not a guaranteed 2-cost character. There's a world where you cannot even play this on turn 2 unless you have a 1-drop. So I'm really looking for that 1-cost character here. Let's see if we get it. And we do. We see 2 1-cost characters. We have a Chernadawg's Followers and a Diablo. So I'm going to actually play the Chernadawg's Followers first by inking this Fox, because I don't think we need 2 Foxes, right? And we have Benja just in case. We'll play the Chernadawg's Followers. The reason this is important is because next turn we can play double 1-drop if we draw one, or we can trigger our Chernadawg to find a second 1-drop if we really need to. And we didn't see it, so in this scenario, I would try and possibly... Actually, there's no point in digging for another 1-drop, because we're playing against Sapphire, and we want to get as much lore as possible before he can clear this Chernadawg. So nope, do not want to use Chernadawg ability. We know we're playing against an item deck, not necessarily like another steel deck, so I don't think this Fox is going to get the value we want it to get, and we're just going to start playing our 1-cost characters to contest this board, and that's pretty much what you want to do when you're playing purple steel against a Sapphire deck. Real quick, before we move on, we don't have any 3-cost character to play except for Benja, but we need to find an inkable card. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finally trigger this Chernadawg, which is really important, because now we need to find an inkable card, and we found an inkable card. We'll go ahead and ink our Strength of a Raging Fire, play the Benja, get rid of his Popsicle, which is going to stop a Flavor Sham play, and that's what you want to do against Sapphire decks when you're playing purple steel, or against most decks, because Benja just quests for 2, and that's really good. Next up, we have a Steel Song list, an Amber Steel list by Mitchell Forker from the Sunday 5K World Class Tournament as well. This list is playing Whole New World, and this is probably one of the few decks that can play Whole New World, and the best way to play this strategy is to flood the board with 1 and 2 drops, play Ariel or Aurora, the Waking Beauty, so that you can sing Whole New World and just keep playing more and more low-cost characters. You also have Miss Bianca, which is really strong. She will only cost 4 ink if you have an ally in play, and you have multiple allies like Daisy Duck, Mr. Smee, the Troubadour. All of these are going to synergize very well with Miss Bianca, because she's a 6-cost character that you can play for 4 ink, so that pretty much gives you way more singable targets for cards like Zeus, Find My Platinum, Whole New World, all your songs. They're even playing 2 Part of Your World to grab back cards from their discard pile, which is really powerful against some of these big Sisu decks. You even have the 2 lore questers like Aurora, Lawrence, Mr. Smee, and Prince Naveen to constantly add pressure every turn early on. And being that Sapphire Ruby is one of your hardest matchups, there's even some locations in this deck like Neverland, the 1-cost location that will get you 1 lore at the start of your turn every turn. Alright, this is our opening hand for Amber Steel Song. We opened up Double Storm, Double Rapunzel, Daisy location, and Find My Platinum. Let's say we don't know what we're playing against. We don't keep the Find My Platinum because that's a very matchup specific card. Sometimes you might be tempted to keep some songs in your opening hand, but I've been taught by some Amber Steel friends that you really don't keep songs in this deck because what you're really trying to find in your opening mulligan is a good curve of 1-cost Daisy, Smee into something like Lawrence, Aurora, or something like Ariel so you can sing your 5-cost songs or lower. And we're going to go ahead and keep our Neverland in hand because it is a low-cost location and it is ink. So one of the issues with Amber Steel is you play a lot of uninkables. So there's also some merit in keeping some inkable cards. But let's see if we can find a 2-cost or another 1-cost. Ooh, this is a really strong line we have here, actually. So we have multiple songs in hand. And I do think that Strength of Raging Fire is a very good card. But I'm very tempted to ink it away because we don't have any singers yet. Realistically, the only card that can sing this is going to be Pete. So that means we can't play this really until turn 4. So I'm going to ink that card away and start off with Daisy Duck and just start gaining as much lore as possible in the early game. They open up with a Vitalisphere, and by the way, Ruby Sapphire is a notoriously hard matchup for this deck, so sometimes it's going to feel like you're at an uphill battle. We drew into a Cinderella Ballroom Sensation, which is good, but we don't have many songs to sing with this anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and ink the Cinderella because now I want to play Neverland and Daisy and just gain as much lore as possible in the early game. We're going to go ahead and open up double Daisy on the opponent, which is really strong. Daisy's going to reveal a Sail the Azurite Sea, which in this meta is actually really strong because a lot of people are playing item decks, and most item decks have a bunch of items, a bunch of actions, and very limited characters. So 9 times out of 10, you're probably going to end up giving your opponent a character anyways, though, but there's a high chance you won't, which is also really good. Our hand's kind of buns, not going to lie, but they went ahead and used the Sail the Azurite Sea so they can ramp into a 4 ink next turn. They also have Vitalisphere, which means our locations are not that strong anymore because most characters are going to be able to clear this Neverland now. But let's start off by questing with our Daisies because that's like our game plan here. We're trying to just quest as early as possible. They revealed a Cusco, so now I'm even less likely to want to keep this location. And now they're going to go ahead and reveal a Popsicle. So we know they have Cusco in hand. The reason you quest with Daisies first is because you want to know as much information as possible before you proceed with your turn. So what this means is now that we know they have Cusco in hand, I do not need this location because we know the Cusco's coming down with the Vitalisphere. We're going to play Pete Games Referee. Maybe that'll stop a How Far I'll Go or something like that. But really what we're trying to do is just keep on playing characters every turn against this deck. Grandma Tala comes down, which is okay for us because that means they can't clear our Daisy Duck just yet. We're going to go ahead and draw Ariel, the Spectacular Singer, which is so strong here. Let's see a Whole New World. And we do see a Whole New World. So we're obviously going to grab Whole New World. We don't have anything else to do, so we're just going to go ahead and quest with our Daisies. Daisy reveals a Sapphire Coil. That goes to the bottom of the deck. Second, Daisy reveals a Visions of the Future. That goes to the bottom of the deck. See, our opponent's not even gaining any value off of this. And we're gaining 5 lore every turn since turn 3 and on because we have double Daisy plus location. Very powerful stuff here. Very powerful stuff. They're going to use Flaresham, draw 2 cards. Seems kind of unnecessary. And then they're going to use How Far I'll Go to get even more cards in their hand and ramp at the same time. But they're getting very close to be prepared. So what I want to do here is find another Pete Games Referee. So we're going to go ahead and ink this Lawrence. And we will go ahead. We can do multiple things. We can hard cast this Along Came Zeus and get rid of this Grandma in case we're afraid of that. But really, we need to trigger Daisy first because Daisy is going to give us this ability to give our opponent more cards in hand, which is totally fine because even though we do that, we're going to use Whole New World anyway. So all the cards that I have in their hand are going to be irrelevant right now. But because I don't want to use this Zeus, I really want to see a Pete off of this Whole New World. I'm going to save the ink and I'm just going to Whole New World anyway. Just get rid of every card in our hand and hope that we can draw a Pete Games Referee to not get Be Prepared. And look at that. We got rid of 2 big Sisus, a Maui Half Shark, double Maui, a bunch of stuff there. Okay, we did not see a Pete Games Referee, which is totally fine by us because we still have a lot of things we can do this turn. I'm going to go ahead and just play cards that do not die to big Sisu. One of those, which is going to be a Mr. Smee, so that we can try and end the game. That means his only out is Be Prepared. He has to have Be Prepared here or bust. and there's no Be Prepared, not even an ink to big Sisu, which they were only at 6 ink, so they couldn't do anyway. So that's how you win with Amber Steel when you're playing against Ruby Sapphire. You want to play characters as fast as possible, and you want to take advantage of the fact that they're not doing anything for the first like 4 turns. Here's another Amber Steel list. This was second place by Adam Tetlow at the Red Saber Games tournament. Huge shout out to you, Adam, for getting second place at this tournament. I know it was a tough feat to take a deck like Amber Steel in a sea of Sapphire, Ruby, and Sapphire Steel. But this list is a little different. It's more of an aggressive list, very similar to the Diggy Hole version that played Dwarves Mine. Instead, we're playing some more aggressive cards that quest for 2, like Lilo the Well-Wisher, and then we also have some cards like Nala, which is a 0/4 character that'll stick on the board very often. For Lawrence, for Smee, we're also playing Lilo the Escape Artist, which will quest for 2 and has the ability to come back from the discard pile against those Ruby decks. For Pluto Guard Dog, and even Rapunzel's Tower. This is a 2-cost location that'll give your characters +3 willpower, which is really strong when you're playing bodyguard characters like Fix-It Felix Jr., which is a 2/4 bodyguard, and Little John, which is a 2/4 bodyguard as well, but he gets evasive on your turn, which could be pretty handy against an opposing Diablo or something. This deck plays very similar to the Amethyst Steel list that we just went over a little bit, so I'm not going to actually go through like mulligans and playing against the red-blue for the sake of time, but you basically want to do the same things against these Sapphire Steel decks, or all these decks where you open up a good curve of Cinderella, Daisy Duck. Cinderella plus Storm Rage on is such a good combo against most decks, against especially Steel matchups. If you open up Cinderella Barroom Sensation alongside Storm Rage on or Strength of Raging Fire, you're going to be able to clear the opposing board really quickly, and that's going to let you quest with all your characters freely. I also like the addition of Captain Hook in this deck. I think it's really powerful to play a card like this because this will be able to contest the opposing Mr. Smees and Calhouns in those Steel Mirror matches, or even the Bell Apprentice Inventor. If your opponent's playing Sapphire Steel and they go Popsicle Bell, you can play Captain Hook, and that's going to stop them from questing with that Bell pretty early on. But this is an aggro deck, so when you're going first, you probably want to play something like Daisy or Lilo instead, and then follow up with a Smee, maybe even a Piglet, and protect those guys with your Little Johns and your Plutos on curve. Let's go over one of my favorite decks of the format. We have an Amber Emerald list that made top 8 of the 5K tournament by Jack Morales. Huge shout out to Jack Morales. I'm pretty sure we've met before, so I want to give him a shout out. And congrats on getting a top 8 at such a big tournament with Chernadawgs. You've been keeping the Chernadawg dream alive, and I really love this list. I've been trying this list out myself, and I think it's very powerful. Very similar to some other aggro decks. You want to start off by playing Daisy on turn 1. But what's really good about this deck is you have multiple 2 lore questers that only cost 1. You have Daisy Duck, Cursed Merfolk, and even Lady over here. She'll quest for 2 if you have a Tramp, which you can play on turn 2, or even on turn 4 with the big Tramp, the Street Dog, which is a card that says for each other character you have on board, you can pay 1 less to play this character. So by turn 4, you'll probably have 3 to 4 characters on your board, so this Tramp will only cost about 3 to 4 ink, which is really strong. Really, what this deck can do, though, is you can play Chernadawg very quickly, because after you resolve this Tramp, you can draw cards and discard cards equal to the amount of other characters you have in play. This means if you have like 4 or 5 characters in play, you can draw 5 and discard 5, and if you draw into a Chernadawg, you just filled up your discard pile with almost 10 characters already. So you'll be able to play Chernadawg pretty early on in this deck. This deck is probably the only deck that can play more than 1 Chernadawg, which is really good. And when I've been playing this deck at local tournaments, I've been able to play Chernadawg once, twice, even 3 times per game sometimes. You have Ursula Deceiver to get rid of some songs in the opponent's hand, because Steel is probably the hardest matchup for this deck, whether it be Purple Steel, Blue Steel. It can be a little problematic sometimes, but Ursula Deceiver will help you a lot there. And then you also have Yzma, the new Yzma from set 7. This is going to be able to let you draw and discard a card on play, so if you have any unwanted uninkables in your hand, like a Chernadawg too early, or maybe some ladies that aren't going to get value anytime soon, you can just draw into a new card and discard your uninkables, so you keep your hand nice and consistent. All right, here we have our opening mulligan with double Ursula, some 1-drops, Kit, Cloud Kicker, and double Tramp, the Street Smart Dog. So I don't think we need to keep Tramp because it can be a little greedy to assume that we're going to have that many characters available. I want to keep 1 Ursula for sure, because on turn 2, if we're playing against Steel decks, we're going to want to remove their songs from their hand pretty much immediately. And I'm down to keep these 2 1-drops, because if we're playing against any Sapphire decks, we can play Daisy turn 1, followed by Merfolk, and maybe even another 1-drop on turn 2. We play so many 1-cost characters in this deck, we're sure to draw one, and look at that, we did. We're going to go ahead and ink a Nala and play a Daisy. The reason we ink Nala over Little John is because we want to not reveal what color combo we're playing immediately. So Nala is an Amber card and Daisy is an Amber card. They've inked a Maleficent Monsters Dragon, which more than likely tells me they're playing a Ruby Sapphire deck. Because we know they're playing Ruby Sapphire, I'm going to go ahead and ink this Ursula, because it's not super important unless they're playing B-Prep. And now we can play a double 1-cost characters on turn 2. 2, which is really strong against these decks. We're going to go ahead and quest with Daisy. We should have done that first, by the way, to see all the information as possible. Daisy gives us a Sail revealed, then it goes to the bottom of the deck, which is really nice to see. They had a Sail already, so they're going to use Sail. They're going to ink twice and draw a card, which is not too shabby, and they're at 3 ink, but they have no characters on board, which is really good for us. So Rapunzel's normally one of the best cards in this deck, but against Ruby Sapphire, it's not that good, because most of the time they don't play characters that you can get value off of this card anyway. The characters they play that are going to remove your cards, you cannot challenge into them to gain value off the Rapunzel. So I'm going to ink this Rapunzel actually, and we're going to go ahead and play this Donald Duck, which gives us more lore. So we'll play Bodyguard. We're going to use the on-play effect as well. We'll give an extra lore to our Little John, and now we can quest for 2. We can quest for 4 with our Cursed Merfolk, and we can quest for Daisy again, which, by the way, you're supposed to quest with Daisy first. I don't know why I keep forgetting. They got a Flavor Sham off of that, which is not too bad because they don't even have any items to capitalize on that, and we're already on 8 lore. As you can see, they have to play Flavor Sham without any items because they have to contest our Cursed Merfolk. And look at this. Our Tramp is now off the top of the deck. We're drawing this card, which means we can play this for only 3 ink. We have exactly 3 ink to spare, but first, let's go ahead and quest with this Daisy and see what we reveal. Another Flavor Sham there. What's really cool is you can do neat combos where we can ink this Nala. Now we have 4 ink. We can play this Ursula. Ursula's going to reveal the hand. Ooh, he has a Pirate's Life and a How Far I'll Go. We want to end the game as fast as possible, so I'm going to go ahead and pick this Pirate's Life because How Far I'll Go is uninkable anyway, so really what we're trying to do is not get Pirate's Life because we would lose 2 lore. And now our Tramp only costs 2 ink instead of 3 because we played an extra character. Big brain plays. We're going to go ahead and draw 5 and discard 5 because that's just the play, right? Really what we're trying to do there is see some Lilo Escape Artists so we have some reoccurring value in our discard pile, but it's perfectly fine. It's fine. We didn't see any because we pretty much win next turn because we have more than 5 lore on the board with the amount of characters we have here. He's going to have to sing How Far I'll Go with this Flavor Sham. He's going to look for something like Maui, but I don't think he has it. Sisu Dying Visitor comes down. It does stop our Daisy, which is really unfortunate, but it's okay because we have more than enough lore to get there. 2, 4, and just like that, we got to 20, and we're only at 4 ink, and they were only able to get to 6 ink. They didn't even have enough time to even potentially shift into a big Sisu, even if they had it, which is really strong for us. So that's how you win with the yellow-green Chernadawg deck, which, by the way, against certain matchups like Purple Steel or Purple decks or Steel decks that are not Ruby, you probably do want to keep Rapunzel. Rapunzel's pretty much very good against any deck that is not playing red. I know this video is kind of long, guys, but hey, you didn't have to pay for this information. So if you're still watching this video and you like what you're seeing, like, comment, subscribe if you're a Lorcana Goons. It does support the channel. But let's go over this green purple top 4 deck by Zero to Hero. Huge shout out to you. I know I follow you on Twitter, guy. So I'm really happy that you did well at this tournament. Playing every copy of Diablo except the other Amethyst card. We got 4 copies of Diablo Spy, 4 copies of Devoted Herald over here, 4 copies of the new Dual Ink Diablo, 3 copies, and then 4 copies of the Obedient Raven. Very awesome to see you have multiple Diablo shift targets here. We have some discard engine going on with Ursula Deceiver, Prince John, Lucifer, Sudden Chill. We even have some item removal like Has Set My Heart, which is very powerful. Purple green is still very strong in this meta, so do not sleep on this deck. I think the general strategy with this deck is very similar to the other aggro decks we've been kind of playing in a little bit. On turn 1, you obviously want to start off with a Diablo so you can shift into your Diablo Devoted Herald and hopefully generate some draw card advantage against these strong meta decks that aren't necessarily prioritizing a way to out this Diablo, because he does have evasive. It's going to be pretty sticky on the board unless your opponent has a Brawl or a Storm Rage on or something like that. This also has a pretty strong discard engine, so on turn 3 or 4 you can play something like Prince John, start singing songs like Sudden Chill, and then on turn 5 play something like Lucifer, which is really good because a lot of these Sapphire decks do not play around Lucifer. This is a card that says when you play this, your opponent either discards 1 action card or 2 regular cards, right? And if they don't have an action to discard, they have to discard 2 cards, which is really powerful for your Prince John. Also just powerful in general because sometimes these Sapphire decks are just ramping into Tamatoa Happy as a Clam, and they're like really relying on that. Or even like some of these Amethyst Steel decks, they're heavily relying on something like Dock in their hand, you know? And if you can slap this Lucifer on before they hit you with the Dock, you're going to be able to get their draw engine out of their hand, and that's really intense. Okay, here is our opening mulligan for green purple. Like I've been preaching, we don't have any 1-cost characters, so I immediately want to get rid of everything in my hand. There's no need to keep any cards in your hand if you don't have a turn 1 play. Having a turn 1 play is so important in some of these decks. I really do think you want to prioritize that. So let's see what our mulligan is like if we put everything back. And we have no 1-cost character, which can be a little tough. We're going to go ahead and run that back so we can try the mulligan again. In general, though, I'm not too disappointed with this hand because on turn 2, we can play something like Ursula. Look at our opponent's hand. Hopefully, remove a song so that our Diablo will survive. So not too shabby there. Which, by the way, for the sake of this video, I switched it up to Sapphire Steel. So our opponent's playing Sapphire Steel now. And in this opening hand, we actually do have a 1-cost character of Diablo Maleficent Spy. We have the shift target Diablo, which is really good too. So we'll automatically be keeping an action. Not too shabby. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this Elsa Fit Spirit because this card is good, but it's more of a late game card and it's very dependent on the matchup. We'll get rid of We Don't Talk About Bruno because it's a song that we don't need in the early game. And Has Set My Heart is item removal, but we don't know if we're playing against an item deck just yet. I want to keep this Little John because there's not too many in the deck, but I want to see a 2-cost character as well. But I'm going to keep this Improvise as my action to discard with a Diablo. So we're going to go ahead and put back those cards. We keep 3 cards in hand. Look at that. We drew another Little John anyways. So for the sake of the argument of not needing a late game card, we'll get rid of this Elsa for now since we don't know what we're playing against. We'll play this Diablo. We look at our opponent's hand and bam, they're playing Sapphire Steel. They have a really strong combo of Fortisphere, Bell, and Stormray John. But it's okay, because if they decide to go with that combo, we're going to get some value off of this Diablo potentially before it goes away. So what we can do here is we can still shift our Diablo. We can discard our Improvise over here. And then next turn, we're going to be able to sing Friends on the other side before we die from Stormray John, which is not too bad. They play the Fortisphere, followed by the Bell. They're going to have to pass turn there. We're going to get some value here because we have our Ursula as well. But we'll sing Friends on the other side first. You want to draw cards first, which is really important. So you, like I've been saying, have as much information as possible. Now we can ink a card. I'll go ahead and ink Improvise because it's just not my favorite card immediately. It is a good card that'll give us plus strength if we need it to, but don't think we need it right now. So I'll go ahead and do that. We'll play our Ursula. Look at the hand one more time. They have double Stormray John, so lucky for them. They have an out no matter what, but it's okay. We got rid of one of them anyways. We get to draw another card from this Diablo, which is good, and we're going to be able to draw a card if they decide to Stormray John again. They use Stormray John on our Diablo, and you get to draw off of that draw as well. If you didn't know that, you got to brush up on your rulings. Very important. If you have a Diablo exerted and it gets popped by Stormray John, the draw still happens while the Diablo is on board. So I still get to draw off of that, which is really good. Now look at the scenario we're in. Our opponent only has 3 cards in hand and we have 6. We have 6 cards in hand, which is really good. So we're going to go ahead and try and take advantage of this situation. We'll ink one of our Diablo Spiteful Ravens since we have 2 of them. We're going to go ahead and play this Prince John. And now we're going to start singing our songs. Let's go ahead and sing our Sudden Chill. Don't know why it says I can sing Bruno. That's not right. I should not be able to sing Bruno there, but I'm going to go ahead and sing Sudden Chill. Make our opponent make some tough decisions while letting us draw some cards as well. Very powerful here. We drew a Merlin Crab, which will give us some more advantage here once they start questing or challenging with their characters. Their Bell's going to go into our Ursula because they get a nice trade there. Can't blame them for that. Maybe I should have waited. You know, maybe I didn't need to wait. Arguable there. Now they only have 1 card in hand, and as you can tell, this game has gone in our favor pretty quickly. It's more of a resource game in this scenario, and we're definitely up on resources compared to them. So we have multiple plays we can do here. We can play Diablo and Diablo, which is really good, and try and capitalize on this crab next turn, or we can play Ursula and see if they have another song. I'm going to go ahead and play Ursula because she has more willpower than this Diablo anyways, so we want to take advantage of that willpower. They have a Lucky Dime in hand. That Lucky Dime is not doing anything right now. They're at 4 ink. There's a world where I want to Bruno something, so we're going to go ahead and ink it to 4. That's perfectly fine, and we'll pass there. We'll pass there because I want to get this Prince John going. Okay, they drew Zeus. Must be nice, and they're going to hardcast Zeus on our Ursula, but it's fine. Our Merlin Crab can get some value here still. That's pretty good. They quest with everything. They get to 4. Actually, we can just ink Crab, play Cricky. That means that we don't have to challenge with our Prince John anyways, but we can still challenge with our Diablo. We can clear this Bell, which will let us draw an extra card. And now we have a Singer for our Bruno, which is pretty nice. We drew a Has Set My Heart, which is pretty nice because we can get rid of this Popsicle right now if we really wanted to. I kind of want to because of the fact that I am terrified of them top decking a Flavor Sham. We know they have Lucky Dime. Flavor Sham puts them back in the game. If they get a value trade there, then we can start doing value trades back. But we might just pass. We'll take the risk. No Flavor Sham off top. He has to draw Flavor Sham. We'll take that risk. They quest for 2 and they pass. They did not have a Flavor Sham. In fact, we can actually look at their hand and see what they have with this Diablo. We're going to go ahead and do that first. We're going to go ahead and look at their hand. We know it's Lucky Dime, and they have a Cogsworth. Very interesting. Cogsworth is a good card, but that's just chilling in their hand now. Now we can use our Bruno to sing this and get rid of their bell. And we got rid of the Cogsworth too, which is really nice. Prince John lets us draw a card. Ooh, this is just disgrace. This is just disgusting. Now we can use Sudden Chill that we just drew off the top. Boom, we get rid of another card from their hand. Our Prince John draws again. Very, very strong. Now we can actually play Has Set My Heart for 2 ink, get rid of their last popsicle. We know they have Lucky Diamond hand, so we're just going to quest for 2 here because their people cannot clear our characters. And now we are ahead in the game. We have all the advantage. We have all the control. Look at that. We got rid of the Has Set My Heart right before the Flavor Sham came down. Ooh, that was so clutch. Love to see that. Maybe I was being a little too risky there. Maybe I was being too greedy. Maybe you're supposed to get rid of the popsicle as soon as you can, but I wanted to get as much advantage as possible. We play another Cricky. If you didn't know, Cricky quests for 3, which is just unfair because now we can get a good challenge here with our Diablo, and we can quest for pretty much 5 now. Quest for 2 with the Prince John and 3 with the Cricky puts us at 7 ink. We know all they have in their hand is just a Lucky Dime, so we're not afraid here. And I think really what this matchup becomes is hand advantage or card advantage. That's why you play the discard cards too, because they have to waste a lot of cards in their early game to get rid of your Diablos, your crabs and stuff like that. And once they have less cards in their hand, you can start using Sudden Chill, Lucifer to get rid of the cards in their hand. If we draw a Lucifer here, that'd be so strong. Gonna go ahead and get rid of this Flavor Sham because like we've been saying, Flavor Sham is so problematic. It's one of the best cards. It actually probably is the best card in Sapphire. So you want to make sure you eliminate this card as fast as possible because the only way he can win or come back into this game is if he starts drawing just cards off of Flavor Sham back to back to back. We play our purple Diablo, followed by a green Diablo, take a gander at his hand to Strength of a Raging Fire, which is doing nothing for him. And next turn, we can quest for 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We can go to 19 lore next turn. If we draw a goat, which I don't know if it's in this deck, but we win this game immediately. He drew a Cogsworth and plays Cogsworth, which is, perfectly fine because we're not afraid of that. And we're just going to keep questing all the way to 19. And to add salt to the wound, we'll play our dual ink Diablo Spiteful Raven, which has evasive. Evasive characters are really good against the Sapphire Steel deck because they will just stay on the board what feels like forever sometimes. You know what I mean? Because they do not have any outs to evasive characters unless they draw their removal cards. So for the most part, this Diablo will stick on the board on turn 2, which is really nice. And now we're at 20 lore. Boom, double Lucky Dime in their hand. Not what they want to see, and that's how you beat Sapphire Steel with green purple. And if you like Emerald decks, there's some other options for you too. You can play Emerald Steel, which is kind of similar, but really the difference is that you're playing Muses in this deck because this is more of a song deck. As you can see, we don't have the same amount of Diablo shift targets in this deck, but you're playing Morph, which is pretty good also as a Diablo shift target. In this build, you can use Morph to shift your Pete Space Pirate, your Beast Tragic Hero, or your Diablo, which is pretty good. Pete Space Pirate will stop your opponent from singing songs, which is actually pretty good against the Sapphire Steel matchups. You can use Ursula Deceiver of All to sing twice any of these cards, Storm Rage on, Strength of a Raging Fire, Sudden Chill even, and you could use Diablo with Cove in combination to move Diablo to the Cove so that he does not lose out to Storm Rage on or your opponent playing that if they have a Bell Sapphire combo. It's a very similar strategy where you want to use your early game characters to take advantage of the board and get your opponent to use cards out of their hands so that you can start following up with Sudden Chills, Prince Johns, and then basically take control of the board and the hand, causing them to have way less hand advantage than you. So for this Emerald deck, you want to keep your 1-drop Diablo as well as your Morph over here to try and find your shift targets. I don't want to keep any songs or Hypnotize. Doesn't seem like I want to keep these cards unless I know I have a Prince John coming, so I'll put those back. Probably should have kept an action here for this Diablo shift, which is really important, but we did not draw the shift Diablo anyways, but it's okay. We're going to go ahead and ink one of our 1-cost Diablos to play a Diablo Maleficent Spy. Look at our opponent's hand, and we know we're playing against Sapphire Steel again. They have double Storm, double Flavor Sham, and a Fortisphere, so their turn 1 play is going to be Fortisphere into a Sail, into a Flavor Sham more than likely, which means we can get rid of some of their songs from their hand with this Ursula Deceiver. We can also set up some interesting lines where we can sing twice with our Deceiver of All. Maybe deal 4 damage to a character and draw 2 cards. Maybe discard 2 cards from the opponent's hand. We'll see what happens though. We're going to ink Pete Space Pirate because we don't have a Pete anyways to play anytime soon, and this deck doesn't look like it's going to be singing any songs anytime soon. They drew a Strength of a Raging Fire. We have multiple songs to choose from. Now, the reason I'm going to pick the Strength of a Raging Fire is because I don't mind keeping them with uninkables in their hand. If I have a chance to get rid of an inkable card, I might as well get rid of the inkable card instead of the 2 of the same card they have. That's another big factor. They had 2 of the same card, so why pick one when they're still going to have it anyways? They go Sail, just as we predicted. They're going to ink twice. They drew a Popsicle. Must be nice for them, right? Pretty sure they're going to play a Flavor Sham next turn, so we have this ability to set up a Ursula Deceiver of All immediately. We don't have any good morph targets, so I'm going to go ahead and play this Ursula right now and start questing for 2. Try and get as much advantage as possible here by doing this. They're going to use Sail. They're going to Ink. They're actually not playing Flavorsham, which is very surprising to me. They only have 3 cards. Sorry, they have 4 cards in hand now. They've used the 1 Storm Rage on. We're going to go ahead and, very interesting. So we can actually sing twice. If we're going to draw 2, we have to deal damage to our own characters. But first, we're not going to do that. So what we are going to do, though, instead is we're going to play Ursula. So we can look at their hand and get rid of the other Storm Rage on. They had to Ink their Flavorsham. Sometimes the AI just lets us win. They have double Fishbone Quill and a Popsicle, which is really interesting. But for the sake of the argument, we're gonna sing this twice, and we're just gonna leave them with only 1 card in their hand, which is really strong. Unfortunately, we do not have another inkable card, so I can't play this beast anytime soon. But we're gonna keep it in our hand, and we'll be patient with this. We'll be patient. We'll go ahead and keep this beast in our hand, so that next turn we can ink, and then the turn after that we can play it. And sometimes they're lucky. They just draw Flavorsham anyways because they're Sapphire, right? That's what Sapphire does best. They just top deck everything. But it's okay because we top deck everything too. Oh my goodness, look at this. We can sing Strength of a Raging Fire twice and deal 6 damage to this Flavorsham, or we can sing Storm Rage on. We can deal 4 damage to the Flavorsham, draw 2 cards, which is very, very powerful. Yes, I would like to do it again. Thank you very much. And now we can even ink one of these beasts, hard cast one of this Strength of a Raging Fire to finish off the Flavorsham, so it's not there anymore. And we can play Hidden Cove, which is just a nice location now because all of our characters next turn will get a nice buff if we move them there, or we can play our Beast Tragic Hero if we draw an Inkable. They are at 7 ink, which is kind of scary, but it's okay. They're top decking. They don't have many cards in their deck that can really remove this board. They're going to play a Pete, which does nothing. It's our turn to start doing some stuff. We're going to ink our Pete, play our Beast Tragic Hero here so we can keep drawing cards. Now we have full advantage of the board, full advantage of the hand, as you can see. That's what they get for being a little bit too greedy with their hand resourcing, and I think that's what you want to do with Emerald discard decks right now. You want to put your opponent in a position of like, ooh, I'm running out of cards in my hand. What do? You know? It's too late to kill this Ursula Deceiver of all because my Beast Tragic Hero is now just going to get us 2 cards every single turn. This card's still really good in the meta. I don't know why people don't play it. Draw 2 cards. Awesome to see because now we can just play Bruno on his Pete, meaning that we can get rid of it immediately because he doesn't have any cards in his hand. We'll ink our Sudden Chill because he doesn't have any cards in his hand anyway. And we're going to quest with everything. There's a world where you don't quest with this Beast Tragic Hero because we could just keep drawing 2. And we're actually going to do that. We're actually just going to leave that there. I could have moved this Ursula to Hidden Cove so he doesn't lose out to the Tipo. Ooh, oh, but we moved the Beast instead, which means he's going to survive that Along Came Zeus, which is actually really important. And now we have full advantage. We're going to go ahead and play this Pete, which means he cannot use his songs next turn or actions actually in general, and we can quest freely with our Beast Tragic Hero. Puts us at 12 lore. We'll move all the guys to the Cove now just to make sure they survive everything. He plays another Pete. It means no actions for us, which means we can't use this Hypnotize, but technically you can use Hypnotize if they have no cards in hand because it just, you know, each opponent chooses and then discards and then the draw is an extra statement. So we could have used this to draw a card, but we can't because the Pete's there, but it doesn't matter. We're at 17 lore. He can't. Oh, now he can. So he's going to use his Zeus to clear the card we had that'll get us 2 lore. Then he's going to use his Pete to clear into our Ursula, which is fine. All he's doing is delaying the inevitable, though. We have Muses here. We have a way to keep questing, get to 18. We're going to just quest instead of challenging because, as you can see, if we challenge, we still be at 17 lore, but questing means we're at 18. So now we have lethal because we have 2 lore on board, and that's the game. He draws a Fortisphere. He draws another Fortisphere. What could he play for 4 ink? Visions of the Future. Don't see him coming back from this. Doesn't make any sense. No, he has to quest for 1, and it's over. We're drawing into Strength of a Raging Fire, which doesn't do anything here anymore. It doesn't really matter because we're at 20 lore already, and that's how you play Emerald Steel. And last but not least, we have the Sapphire Steel aggro deck, or the Kiwi deck as it's been dubbed. This is a very different take on Sapphire Steel, and personally, I think the other Sapphire Steel version is a little bit better, but really what this is letting you do is have a strong matchup in the early game against other Sapphire decks, or even the Steel decks that are trying to gain some like early advantage against you. You're able to play Mulans, Calhouns, Smees instead to contest those boards, and you also have the new Jafar card over here, which is a character that gives your other characters +2 challenger when you play it, so that'll let you get some nice trades. If you're going first, though, you can open up some disgusting curves of Smee, Alice into Pluto Guard Dog, which basically means you're going to be able to quest for 4 every turn for a cool minute, and if you follow it up with Cogsworth, your characters are going to just stick to the board, which is really cool. Another really nice card that this deck can play is Micduck Manor, which is pretty good against some of the Ruby Sapphire or like some of the other slower decks that can't necessarily clear locations. Some of the Emerald decks suffer when your opponent plays a location, like the Emerald Amethyst or Emerald Steel. There's not too many location removal cards in that color pool, so if you can slap a Micduck Manor on them, it's probably going to generate a decent amount of lore. This deck is a deck that plays Dock, but it also plays Flavorsham as your draw engine. So if you ever don't want to just like rely on something like Dock, then you can go ahead and just play it on turn 2 with no ability, because Flavorsham is also another way for you to draw cards. Let's go ahead and test some mulligans. Here's our opening mulligan hand. We have Jafar, Dock, Fortisphere, Bell, Zeus, Calhoun, and Smee. Love to see it. I'll put back the Zeus because I don't need it right now. We'll put back Dock because, again, I don't really like keeping Dock in the opening hands for this deck. I like this idea of keeping this Jafar in opening hand because we have a good challenger line with our Smee Calhoun, but and it'll be good ink too. So realistically, since we're going first, we have a pretty decent line of play already. I'm gonna go ahead and start that off. We'll keep Bell because Bell's just really good to keep. I will go ahead and ink one of our Smees since we have 2 of them and a Calhoun. Usually when I have multiple of the same cost character, that's usually what I decide to ink. Has to be one of those. Fortisphere will draw us a card. Now we can play our Bell on turn 1, which will just let us start questing for 1 lore every turn because we have a 3-cost character on turn 1. They ink a Scrooge McDuck. They play a Popsicle, telling me they're probably playing Sapphire Steel or Sapphire Ruby. Personally, against the Sapphire decks, I want to go fast, as they say. So I'm going to go ahead and ink the Strength of a Raging Fire because I don't think it's going to get much value anytime soon. Even though I have a 3-cost character, I just don't see myself using Strength of a Raging Fire against these decks immediately unless it is a Sapphire Steel deck, which it very well could be. They end up playing Sail. They end up inking 2 times this turn, not playing a single character, which is what I was saying. We're not getting value off of the Strength anytime soon, so I don't need to keep it. Ooh, and here's some pretty good stuff. We drew Alice on turn 3. So I'll ink this Jafar now. Jafar quests for 2, which is also very good, by the way. We're going to ink the Jafar and play our Alice, because now we have multiple characters that quest for 2. Smee will quest for 2, putting us at 3. Bell's going to quest for 1, putting us at 4 lore. And next turn, we can even use Alice's ability to give somebody ward, which is really nice. And if we draw an inkable card, we're playing Calhoun and Smee on the same turn. That's going to be nuts. They're setting up their board by playing Popsicle, Fortisphere. It doesn't look like they have any opening or early game characters to contest our board, which is really good for us. We only have 1 item in the discard, so I don't think this Tamatoa is necessary right now, and we're not ramping with this deck. As you can tell, this deck doesn't play any ramp for the most part, so we're just trying to play on curve, and this curve is dictating that we play Calhoun and Smee on the same turn. We're going to quest with this Alice, and we're going to protect our Smee. We're going to protect our new Smee because Smee quests for 2, Calhoun does not quest for 2. We want to make sure that our 2 lore questers can survive as long as possible and keep generating as much lore as possible. We're at 4 ink, which is really good because we have a Zeus in hand as well. This means that if they play a Tamatoa Happy as a Clam, if they play a Scrooge McDuck, or if they play something like Big Sisu, then we're going to have an out to it. Even if we have to hardcast it, that's perfectly fine. We don't have an out to Flavorsham, but it doesn't matter. Flavorsham is a 1-strength character, which means that it can't really contest much anyways, and if they decide to swing with it, that means they're not going to be drawing with it. If in fact, I actually want to use this Zeus to get rid of this Bell because I do not want them to clear this Smee over here, because this Smee is going to go in for about 6 lore, which is really powerful. We're going to quest with our Smee before he gets banished on his own, quest with all of our characters. This last Alice quest is going to get us to 17 lore, and you can give ward to another character again, and we're going to give it to our Smee every single time. We're not even going to ink this Milan because we want to keep as many characters as possible in our hand to make sure we can get to 20 lore as fast as possible against these Sapphire decks, these pesky Sapphire decks. See, he used Storm Rage on. He cannot target the Smee because the Smee has ward, and this Flavorsham cannot banish Smee because it's not enough strength yet. So we're going to be able to net the extra lore left over from this Smee. And just like that, we win the video game very quickly against Sapphire Steel. A very quick strategy, an aggro Sapphire Steel strategy, if you will. They weren't even able to play many of their cards because of how fast we were going. And that's how you beat Sapphire Steel with the Kiwi aggro deck. Whew, that was a long one, and we didn't even go through like every single potential deck and color combination. There's still Ruby Amethyst, there's still Blurple, there's still some other decks you can try out and play. But if you guys want to try out any decks that you've seen here, I'm going to put the links in the description below. I'm also going to leave a link to the inkdex.com website so you can look at tournament reports. You can keep up with all of these win rates that they've been providing. Let me know what you guys think of this this video and overall what you guys think of the meta. I know it's kind of scary that everybody is playing Sapphire and it has clearly the highest win rate across the board from all of these, but I do think you could still have fun at locals, play some Chernadawg decks, play some Amethyst Steel decks, or if you want to be a meta goon, then yeah, play the Sapphire Ruby decks, because as you can see here, this is looking like the best deck of the format with the highest win rate. So can't wait to hear your opinions below. Please, any criticism is more than welcome, but just be nice about it. I have feelings too. But until then, remember to stay tuned to Lorcana Goons. I really hope this video helped anybody who wants to get into Lorcana or understand how to play the game a little bit. So please let me know if it did. And if you want to be part of the Goon Squad community, join our Discord below. We share deck lists, we share ideas down there below too. And there's no paywall once again. So if you don't want to pay for some of the information, be sure to hit that like, comment, and subscribe button. And we'll see you goons next time.